when the object gets charged, it starts attracting or repelling the other charged or uncharged bodies, and that is what is called electric effects. Okay, that is what is called electric effects. So electric effects means a charged body will start attracting other neutral or oppositely charged body. Correct? Oppositely charged body. Or like charges, if suppose they have like charges, then they will start repelling each other. Agreed? So this is what is the electric effect. Okay, when we say electric effects means this. Agreed? Now, you see, when they acquire the electric effects, okay, so there are certain properties of the charges which actually possessed by these charges. Okay, so what are the properties? What are the main properties of the charges? Let's talk about that. So as far as properties are concerned, first important property is called quantization. Okay, you must have heard about it. But before studying quantization, I just want to give you a little idea about how the charging process takes place. Suppose there are two objects, okay, or the same, the one thing which we always take, glass rod and silk cloth. Okay, glass rod and silk cloth, right? And if we suppose we rub the glass rod by this silk, now they acquire the charge. Okay, so what happens when we actually rub the glass rod by silk? So basically there is friction acting between them. Now due to the friction, what happens? Due to the friction, when the friction acts between them, due to the friction, energy is acquired by the electrons. Energy is acquired by the electrons. And when these electrons, they acquire the energy, okay, what happens that they may move from one body to another body. One body to another body. Okay. Now, one thing should be clear to you, that all the material is made up of atoms. Entire universe is made up of atoms. So, like if we talk about silk or glass rod, they are made up of atoms. And atoms are basically electrically neutral bodies. They are electrically neutral. What does it mean? They possess equal number of positive and negative charges. Equal number of positive and negative charges. And that's why we can say that any body initially is electrically neutral. Correct? It is initially neutral. So electrically it is neutral. And if it is electrically neutral, okay, so it possesses equal number of positive and negative charges. But what happens when we rub an object against other? Suppose object A is there, object B is there, and we rub them. So what will happen, that electrons will transfer from A to B. Now you know that electrons, they possess negative charges. Agreed? Electrons, they possess negative charges. So if A is losing electrons, then certainly it will becoming positively charged. Suppose we say that object A lost 5 electrons. So it will become 5 times positive charge. And object B gains 5 electrons. So there are 5 negative charges on object B. This is the way we can actually get the object's charge. Now you can say that charge on any body, okay, should be equal to either positive or negative. And do you know who did this classification of positive and negative charges? This classification was done by Benjamin Franklin. Okay, he actually classified. Benjamin Franklin is the same gentleman who actually suggested that the electricity which we see here in laboratory and the lightning, they are the same electricity. And he actually worked extensively on this, and he classified the charges like positive and negative charges. Okay, he suggested that. Now, here we are actually observing that actually charges possessed are depending on the number of electrons transferred from one material to another. So suppose an object is possessing charge, so that charge may be either positive or negative, and that should be equal to integral multiple of charge on an electron. Okay, integral multiple of charge on an electron means what? It means that, see, here what will happen? Electrons will transfer from A to B. It may be possible that in some case 5 electrons will transfer, in some case 10 will transfer, in some case 10 to the power 1, 10 to the power 2, 10 to the power 3, like this electrons will transfer. Okay, but they will be always in integral number. It will not happen that half electron has passed or 1/4 electron has passed. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
And due to that, what will happen? Due to that, what will happen? This n stands for the number of electrons. Okay, it is integral number. So you can write Q is equals to plus minus, that is positive or negative, n times E. This is what is quantization of charge. Okay, this is what is called quantization of charge. Charge on an electron is either positive or negative, and that is equal to integral multiple of charge on an electron. Because integral number of electrons can transfer from one body to another. We can also understand it like this. Try to understand. Like suppose we are talking about a wall. If we are talking about a wall, then what is the basic or fundamental unit of a wall? Can you suggest? What is it?
Sir,
Brick. Right. So there are some walls, they are made up of 5 bricks. Okay. Say 100 bricks or 500 bricks. Maybe some made up of 1000 bricks. Agreed?
yes, sir.
So big thing is made up of small things. Similarly, big charge or say the charge on a body is equal to integral multiple of charge on an electron. This is what is called quantization for you. Quantization is nothing but a big thing is made up of small things. That's it. Okay. And here we have taken n because you know that n stands for integral. Okay. It stands for integral. Okay. Because integral number of electrons can only transfer from one body to another. Now, I hope that this is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
Now comes charge on an electron. Do remember that as far as the charge on an electron is concerned, it is equals to minus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. This is the value of the charge on an electron. Agreed? This is the value of charge on an electron. Now, if suppose you have to determine the number of electrons. What is the unit of charge? Unit of charge is coulomb. Suppose you have to determine number of electrons in 1 coulomb of charge. So how can we determine that? So for that, what you will do, you know Q is equals to Ne. Plus minus stands for whether the electron is gained or lost by the material. Okay. So Q equals to N times E. Q is what? It is 1. And electrons, if we take the magnitude of the charge, we will take 1.6 into 10 to the power 19. So N will be 1 upon 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. Further, you can solve this. This is actually a standard value which I know. So I will tell you that it will be 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. This will be 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. So these are the number of electrons available in 1 coulomb of charge. That there are 2 types of charges. Okay, charge can be either positive or it can be either negative. Okay, positive or negative charges are there, and you know that who did the classification of this? Benjamin Franklin. He was the scientist who did this. Okay. Then there are other properties of charges also that we are going to discuss. Like charges are additive. Okay, charges are additive. Additive means what? That you can simply add or subtract the charge. Suppose that there are many charges, and if you have to find a total charge, so what you will do? You will be simply adding them: 5 coulomb, 2 coulomb, minus 3 coulomb, minus 1 coulomb, plus 9 coulomb, like this. Simply you can add charges, and this is what is called charges are additive. Okay. Then the next property is charges are conserved. Charges are conserved. So what do you mean by conserved? Charges are conserved. Conserved means charges can neither be created nor be destroyed. Charges can charges can neither be created nor be destroyed. Neither be created nor be destroyed. Neither be created nor be destroyed. You can't create the charges, you can't destroy the charges. They can neither be created nor be destroyed. What we can do is we can transfer them. Charges can be transferred from one body to another. However, during the process you should remember that the total charge will remain conserved. Total charge remains conserved, and this is what is called conservation of charge. Okay, I will give you an example of that. See, suppose that there is that simple glass rod and then we have silk. Okay, silk, glass rod and silk. This is glass. Now suppose we rub the glass rod by silk. If we do that, what will happen? You know that because of rubbing there is friction produced, and due to the friction, now before rubbing they both were neutral. It means that a charge on this was 0 initially and charge on this was also 0 initially, right? So if we say charge before, okay, if we say charge before, so charge before is 0 coulomb, correct or not? Or in simple numeral we can write 0 coulomb. Now suppose that charges are transferred, okay, because of rubbing. So say after rubbing, charges are transferred. So suppose that this glass rod, it loses say 10 electrons, and it loses 10 electrons, so it becomes plus 10. Okay, okay, 10. So it becomes plus 10 electron. It possesses plus 10 electron charge now, and this will possess minus 10 electron charge because 10 electrons is being transferred. Okay, so it becomes minus 10 electrons. Okay, now you can say after charging, if we talk about the system, okay, after charging, if we talk about the system, we will get plus 10 coulomb of charge, or you can say plus 10 E of charge minus 10 E of charge on this. So total charge will be again 0. What does it mean? That the charge remains conserved. Okay, total charge on a system remains conserved. It is not going to change. Any doubt?
No, sir.
Understood?
Yes, sir.
So it means that the charges are conserved. So charges are quantized, charges are conserved, charges are additive. Okay, these are main properties of charges. Okay, and do remember that because this electricity is produced due to friction, that's why we also call it frictional electricity. Okay, we also call it frictional electricity. Yeah, we talked about charging due to friction. There can be other methods of charging also. One is called charging by induction. You must have heard about. Suppose that this is an insulating stand and there is a sphere. Okay, now it is neutral at this moment. Now what we have done, we brought a positively charged glass rod near to this sphere like this. So here comes the positively charged glass rod. Okay, here we have the positively charged glass rod. This is positively charged glass rod which we brought. So when we bring the positively charged glass rod, what will happen? Now in that case, what will happen? That electrons will be induced. Okay, so suppose that 4 electrons, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 electrons have transferred or say moved this side. Why? Because they are being attracted towards the positive charge, and positive charge on the other end, equal positive charge on the other end will be produced. Why? Because earlier these charges were evenly distributed, but here what is happening, that because we brought the positive charge, that's why the shifting has taken place, and now the charge density has shifted a bit. Now electrons are moving towards this side, left side, and the right side is actually positively charged. Okay, let's now talk about the third case. Okay, the same thing is there, but what we are doing now is in the third step, this is the glass rod. Okay, of course positively charged glass rod is there, and you know that the electrons, these electrons are actually attracted towards this, so you have negatively charged electrons also on this side. But what you have done now is you have connected this to ground like this. You connected this to ground. This is grounded. Okay, this is how you show grounded. So if it is grounded, then what will happen? Do you know that ground has equal number of positive and negative charges, and they are infinite in number. Okay, doesn't matter how many electrons you are transferring to ground or how many electrons you are taking from ground, its charge will remain intact. There won't be any change. Okay, so what happens in this case is, what will happen? These positive charges which were possessed by this sphere in the second case, where these positive charges have gone.
To the ground.
Do you think that the positive charges have gone to the ground? Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but that is wrong. Why? Because positive charges can't move. What will happen? What has actually taken place is that the electrons, they have moved from ground to the sphere and they neutralize these positive charges. Now you may ask that then, sir, if you connected it, why these negative charges have not flown to the ground?
Yes, sir.
Why? Because they are actually being attracted by the positively charged rod. Had this rod been not there, then they must have flown to the ground. But in this case, they will not. Okay. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Now what will happen? Now what we are going to do is, we are going to have the sphere and we remove that earthing. Okay, we remove the earthing. Positive charge rod is still there, and you know that because of that the negative charges, they are also there. These are the negative charges there, and we removed it. Okay, we removed the earthing. Now, after that, what has happened? You see, this is the sphere. Okay, now we remove the glass rod also. So once we remove the glass rod, what will happen? Negative charges will actually evenly get distributed on the sphere. Okay, and this is how you can actually charge a sphere without touching it. Have you touched it?
Yes, sir.
So this is called induction. What do we call it?
Yeah.
Induction. This is the process of induction, right? This is the process of induction. Now you can do one more thing also here. What can you do? I will tell you. See, here what you can do is, you can have two spheres instead of one. Suppose you have two spheres here. Okay, you have two spheres here. It's the first sphere, and there is another sphere. Okay, and they are separated a bit. Just a minute, I will redraw. So suppose you have two spheres. One is this, and the other one is this, and they are separated. Huh? They are separated. They are touching. They are touching each other. Okay, here they are touching each other. Right. So they are working as a system. Right. Say this is A, this is B. Now what we are doing? We are bringing a positively charged glass rod here near to. Okay. So this is the sphere. It's the first sphere. And then there is another sphere. and then we are bringing a positively charged rod near to it, okay, like this. What will happen now? Try to understand. When you bring a positively charged rod, glass rod, certainly the electrons, because electrons can move, so electrons will start moving towards this end, okay, they get attracted, so they start moving towards this end, and opposite end will become positive charge. Now here A and B both are acting as a system here, right? They are not separated because they are touching each other. That's the point here. Now what we are doing, we are separating these two spheres a bit, okay, little bit, not much but little bit. See, so what we have done, we have separated them a bit by a small distance, okay, they are still insulated, right, and we have separated them a bit, but do remember that glass rod is still there, connected, not connected but kept there, and you know that there are positive charges here, right, and what will happen, you know that when you take them to a when you separate them to a very short distance, this will still remain negative and this will become positive, okay, right, so nothing has changed actually, it remains almost same, because still they are getting attracted, these electrons are getting attracted by the positively charged rod. Now we remove the glass rod, we remove the glass rod. So what will happen now? When we remove the glass rod, now these electrons and positive charges, they will start getting attracted towards each other, and what will happen is they will be coming towards each other like this side, okay, so electrons will come on this side and positive charges will come on this side, right, okay, and at the end when we separate them completely, now we have increased the distance between them to a greater extent, okay, so they are far away now. So in that case what will happen? Now in that case these electrons will be evenly distributed over the surface like this, negative, 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 and positive charges would be evenly distributed on the surface. So this is how you can actually charge two spheres. So we know that charges, they attract each other, okay, or repel each other, but we need to formulate them, and who formulated it? Coulomb's law, okay, so Coulomb's law is actually like the formula for the gravitational force acting between the two charges. You know that you know that we have the formula for the gravitational force, and it says that force acting between two masses is directly proportional to product of the masses and inversely proportional to square of distance between them. Yes, so this you know. On the same line, Coulomb also established the force acting between 2 point charges. Between 2 point charges, point to be noted. These charges are point charges. Yeah. So what happens that if we have two charges, 2 point charges, say Q1 and Q2, and these two charges are actually kept at a distance, say small r, okay, then what will happen that these charges will attract or repel depending on the type of the charge they possess, okay, you know, like charges repel and unlike charges attract. According to Coulomb, force acting between, and this is an experimental rule, he established it experimentally by experiments. According to Coulomb, force acting between two charges is directly proportional to product of the magnitude of the charges, okay, product of the magnitude of the charges, and distance between them is inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. If we combine these two, we will be getting F is proportional to mod of Q1 mod of Q2 upon R square. If we remove the proportionality sign, you know that there comes always a constant. So this constant is K. K Q1 Q2 upon R square. Correct? And this K is called electrostatic force constant. Electrostatic force constant. This is called electrostatic force constant. Okay, and the value of K. Okay, this K can also be written as like this. It can also be written as K equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. Okay, and K is equal to 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per coulomb square. Okay, this is the unit of it. Okay, so this is how this K is actually defined. Its value is this. Here epsilon naught. What this epsilon naught is here? Do remember that epsilon naught, its value is 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12 coulomb square Newton inverse meter to the power minus 2. Now you must be wondering that from where we are getting all these values. So it's very simple. You know F is equals to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 upon R square. I am not talking about the value of it. Okay, value you have to remember. But suppose you have to find epsilon naught. What you will do? Epsilon naught will be 1 upon 4 pi F Q1 Q2 upon R square. Right? So here you can see that force will be in Newton inverse. Here you have Newton inverse. Coulomb square, here you have Coulomb square. And meter to the power minus 2. So all these values you have here, very easily you can find it out. Okay. Now, dimension of epsilon naught. If you have to determine the dimension of epsilon naught, that also you can do. You must have studied dimension analysis in 11th standard. So what you are going to do here is epsilon naught is equal to Q1 Q2, that can be written as Q square. Basically this is charge upon F into R square. Do remember that 4 pi is a constant, it has no unit. Now charge is not a fundamental physical quantity, current is. You know current is equals to charge upon time. So charge will be current into time. Agreed? So dimension of charge will be, if current is represented by A, so it will be A into T. And here you can see, and not ampere, the notation is A. Okay, it's not ampere, it doesn't stand for ampere here. So you can write A to T2 because its power 2 is there. And then comes R2, R2 is length 2. Okay, and the last thing is force. Dimension of force you must have remembered, it is mass into acceleration, so that gives you m1 L1 t to the power minus 2. So when we substitute here m1 L1 t to the power minus 2, right? So dimension of epsilon naught will be, when you solve this, it will be m to the power minus 1, L to the power 1, L to the power 2, L to the power 3. So it will be L to the power minus 3, t to the power minus 2, and go up, it will be to the power 4 and a to the power 2. Okay, so m minus 1, m minus 1, L minus 3, to the power 4, a to the power 2. This is the dimensional formula for epsilon naught. I hope that this is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
There is one very important topic, and there are many a times there are numericals asked which are related to this particular topic. Dielectric constant, or relative electrical permittivity, relative electrical permittivity permittivity. Okay, so let's talk about this dielectric constant or relative electrical permittivity. Now suppose there are two charges and these two charges are kept in a medium. Okay, so when we keep them in a medium, okay, medium is other than vacuum or air. Okay, if we keep it say in water, okay, so we can write it is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon q1 q2 upon r square, correct? Where epsilon, okay, it is the electrical permittivity, it is the absolute, you can say it is absolute electrical permittivity of that medium in which it is kept, of that medium. Okay, absolute electrical permittivity of that medium in whichever medium charges are being kept. Then comes when we keep them in vacuum or air. So suppose we kept these charges in air or vacuum. So in that case we will be writing 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 upon r square, correct? And epsilon naught is said to be absolute electrical permittivity of free space or vacuum. Okay, so let this be equation number 1, let this be equation number 2, and now what we are going to do is we are going to find this f naught upon fm. So when we do this by equation 1 and 2, what you will be getting? F naught upon fm will give you epsilon upon epsilon naught. Yes or no? If you do f naught upon fm, it will be epsilon upon epsilon naught, and that is equal to epsilon r, or that is also called k. Okay, epsilon r or k is called the relative, that was the topic, relative electrical permittivity. It means that this is the relative electrical permittivity of that medium with respect to vacuum or air. Okay, with respect to vacuum or air. One more very important conclusion you can actually draw out from here. Okay, that I will tell you. You know that Fm, that is in medium, the expression was 1 upon 4 pi epsilon, not 1 upon 4 pi epsilon only. Q1, Q2 upon r square, this was the expression. And epsilon from this expression, we could write epsilon as epsilon naught into epsilon r. Okay, so epsilon is epsilon naught into epsilon r. Okay, so we can write 1 upon 4 pi epsilon into epsilon naught into epsilon r, and that is q1 q2 upon r square, and this is fm, right? Epsilon r can also be written as k. We can write it as k also. Okay, generally we write it by k, so we can write it like this also: 1 upon k multiplied by 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 upon r square. Agreed? This is fm. Now you can write this as f naught. So fm will be equal to 1 upon k times f naught. Okay, fm is equals to 1 upon k times f naught. What does it mean? It means that the force acting between two charges in a medium, when they are kept in a medium, that force will be 1 upon k times the force acting between the charges when they are kept in vacuum. Okay, because F naught is the force acting between the charges when they are kept in vacuum, and Fm is the force acting between the charges when they are kept in medium. So in medium, when they are kept, the force acting will be 1 upon k times the force acting between the charges when they are kept between air or vacuum. Okay, between air or vacuum. So this is what is the meaning of this particular expression. Okay, and this is extremely important. Do you know why? I will tell you. You know that like ions NaCl, it gets dissolved and it gets converted into ions Na plus and Cl minus when they are dissolved in water. Do you know why? The reason being, value of K for water is 81. 81. Yeah. So what happens? Fm is equals to 1 upon K times F naught. What does it mean? That in air, if the force is F naught between the sodium plus and chloride ions, then do remember that when they are immersed in water, then in that case the force becomes 1 upon 81 times that in air. And because of that, what happens? Their force of attraction becomes very less. And because the force of attraction becomes very less, they can be separated. And that's why they are formed in form of, they are placed in form of ions there, or they are present in form of ions there in the water solution of it, or in the aqueous solution of it. So this is extremely important point. Now, suppose there are many charges. Okay, there are many charges which are unevenly distributed in a space. Okay, and there is another charge. Say there is a charge Q naught, and what we have to do, we have to determine the force acting on this charge Q naught due to charges Q1, Q2 and so on Qn. Okay, so you have to determine the forces. So how will you determine the force? So for that, what you will do, suppose you have to find the resultant force acting on charge Q naught. So you will write resultant force acting on charge Q naught, that is O, is actually the vector sum of force acting on the charge Q naught due to first charge plus force acting on the charge due to second, plus and so on, plus force acting due to nth charge. So basically what you have to do is, you have to do the vector sum of it, and then you know what you will be doing. You will be substituting all these forces and you can get the answer. You will get a better idea about this when we will do some numericals related to that. Okay, that will give you a better idea. Okay, am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So here we talked about the discrete charge distribution. These are discrete charges. These are discrete charges. Discrete charges means they are separated. They are being separated like this. But there can be continuous charge distribution as well. Okay. Now there are various ways of continuous charge distributions. Continuous charge distribution. Charge can be distributed continuously also. So continuous charge distribution. Okay, you see, there can be many ways by which we can actually distribute the charge continuously. There can be linear charge density. There can be linear charge density. Okay, there can be surface charge densities. Charge can be distributed on a surface, so surface charge. Or there can be volume charge distribution. There can be volume charge distribution. Surface charge, instead of density you can write distribution. Okay, that sounds better than this. So linear charge distribution, surface charge distribution, and volume charge distribution. Okay, now when we talk about linear charge distribution, suppose that there is a wire, a straight wire, and charge is evenly distributed over this, suppose like this. Okay, So we can say linear charge density, it is defined as lambda, and it is given by charge per unit length. Okay, so we can have this first, linear charge density. This is called linear charge density. Okay, this is called linear charge density, right? And using this linear charge density, we can actually determine the force acting on a charge due to this type of charge distribution. Similarly, there can be surface charge density. So it is denoted by sigma. Sigma is given by Q upon S. S is the area. Okay, so this is called surface charge density. Surface charge density. Okay, and we will see how can we determine that. And then comes the volume charge density. So that is denoted by rho. Rho is given by Q by V, charge per unit volume. This is called volume charge density. Volume charge density. Okay, so these are three types of charge distributions. Generally they are not used. Okay, so that's why I have just given you the idea about them, right? Now what we can do is we can do some numericals, okay, related to the topics which we discussed just now. Okay, so my question is, the first question which I am asking is, which is bigger? Give me a moment. Yeah, which is bigger? A Coulomb charge, or a Coulomb charge, or charge on an electron. A Coulomb charge or charge on an electron, which one is bigger? So you see, in order to solve this, what you will do, first of all, you will be writing charge on an electron, E is equals to 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 Coulomb. Yeah, so this is the charge on an electron. And when we write charge 1 Coulomb, okay, so what happens? You know that when we apply Q equals to N times E, so we get N is equals to Q by E. And when you solve this, you will be getting 6.25 into 10 to the power 18. It means that in 1 Coulomb charge, there is charge of 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. Okay, 6.25 into 10 to the power 18 electrons. So certainly, which one is bigger? 1 Coulomb charge is greater than the charge on an electron. Okay, fine. Now next question says, if a body gives out 10 to the power 9 electrons every second. If a body gives out 10 to the power 9 electrons every second, okay, how much time is required? How much time is required how much time is required by the body to acquire a charge of 1 Coulomb? Acquire a charge of 1 Coulomb. Okay, so this is the question. What body is doing? It is losing, or gives out means losing. So it is becoming positive charge basically. And number of electrons which are lost are 10 to the power 9. 10 to the power 9 electrons are lost per second. These many electrons per second are lost. Okay, fine. And total charge required is 1 coulomb. Agreed.
Yes.
Now what we can do is we can write the charge acquired or lost by the body in 1 second. If we say charge acquired by the body in 1 second, so how much charge will it be? Q equals to n times E. This will be the charge. And what is n? N is 10 to the power 9. So this gives you 10 to the power 9 into 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. So this makes it 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 10 coulomb. So this is the charge acquired by the body in 1 second. Correct? This is a charge acquired by the body in 1 second. In 1 second, body is acquiring this charge. So certainly what will happen? If you have to find a time, so you know that total charge will be small q into time. In 1 second this much, in t time, if you multiply it, you will get q. Or you can say time will be the total charge divided by small q. Total charge is how much? Total charge is 1, and this is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19, minus 10. And then you solve this, this will be 6.25 into 10 to the power 6.25 10 to the power 10. Okay, 6.25 into 10 to the power I think this will be 9 10 to the power 9. So 6.25 into 10 to the power 9. So these many seconds, and these many seconds means, do you know how much time? Just imagine, it will take 198 point something years. So by this you can get the idea that 1 coulomb is a very huge charge. Correct or not? It's not a small charge, it's a big quantity of charge. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
See, question says that 2 electrons are there, 2 electrons and a positive charge q. They are held along a straight line. So at what position and for what value of q will the system be in equilibrium? Now try to understand. We have a point A, we have another point B, and here we have minus E charge, here we have minus E because 2 electrons are there, and then we have a charge plus q which is kept somewhere here, we don't know where, and they are kept at a distance. This distance is also not mentioned, so let it be x. Okay, now it is asked that they should be in equilibrium. Okay, these two charges should be in equilibrium. Now what do you mean by equilibrium? So try to understand that equilibrium means that they will remain stationary like the way they are. And for that, what should happen? Suppose we are talking about this particular charge. So what should happen? That this positive charge will attract this charge. Say this is attracting by F1, and this negative charge will repel this charge by say F2. And if this system is in equilibrium, then what should be there? Then in that case, the forces F1 and F2, they should be equal. If they are equal, then we can say that yes, equilibrium is established. Otherwise not. Okay, so what we will do is we will be finding this. Okay, suppose F1 is this attractive force, so it will be 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. So we are writing K. Q1 is what? Q1 is plus Q, and Q2 is what? It is minus E divided by distance square. What is the distance? It is held at what position? The position is also not mentioned, right? 2 electrons and a positive charge q are held along a straight line at what position and for what value of q? Okay, at what position and for what value of q? So one thing should be clear, that if these two charges are equal, then this position has to be at the center only. Okay, because their magnitudes are same, so it should be at the center only, and that's why this will be x by 2 square. Correct? X by 2 square, and that should be equal to F2, means the force acting on this minus E due to this. So it will be K. Q1 is minus E. Q2 is also minus E upon R square. R square is X square. Next step, you can cancel this. E and E will cancel. Minus minus is plus. So this will be Q upon X square by 4 minus E, and this will be 1 upon X square. X square is also cancelled. Correct?
Only E.
Yeah, here we'll have E square. E
Yes, sir.
square. So this E will cancel. So Q will be minus E by 4. Okay. Now it can't be negative basically. Okay, because it is mentioned that it is positive. So it can't be negative. Okay. So this is actually giving an absurd result in that case if we say, right? So it can't be negative. It will be positive only, and that should be plus E by 4. Okay. So magnitude of charge should be plus E by 4, and this will be the answer. I hope that this is clear to you.